Welcome to Landwards, the podcast for the land-based engineering community, brought to you by the Institution of Agricultural Engineers.
Hello and welcome to the Landwards podcast. I'm your host, Andy Newbold, editor of Landwards, and I'm joined today by none other than Mr. Graham Higginson, who is a senior lecturer at Harper Adams University. He'll correct me if I'm wrong now, but anyway, hello, Graham.
Hello, Andy. And you are correct.
That was a great stab in the dark of a guess, yes. Once again, flying by the seat of our pants on a Friday afternoon when we're recording this. Anyway, Graham, thanks very much for taking the time today. We're going to talk about career and training and education and steps into and through an ag engineering career. So let's start from the top. Graham, tell us a little bit. It sounds a bit like Blind Date, doesn't it? This. What's your name, love, and where do you come from? Graham, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got there.
Yeah, righto. So I was brought up on a mixed farm in West Lancashire, sort of just about 3 miles inshore from Blackpool, farming on black moss. From an early age, I was involved in that servicing, repair, maintenance, and manufacturing and modification of the farm's equipment. Dad undertook as much as he possibly could. Very rarely do we have a dealer's van in the yard. So that inspired me to undertake a national diploma in engineering at what was Blackpool Tech, which I believe now is Blackpool and Fylde College. And then that progressed me through onto a higher national diploma at Writtle College. So obviously, back in the news now as a training centre for CNH or Case New Holland. Apprentices are going back there later the year in 2022. Whilst at Writtle, then I got introduced to the Institution of Agricultural Engineers whilst I was there in my first year, and I kind of immediately saw the benefits and those technical meetings. At the time, we were venturing over to what was Ford Tractor Training Centre at Boreham House.
It was at Basildon, was it?
No, that was at Boreham.
Boreham, sorry.
On the outskirts of Chelmsford.
Right.
They closed that and took training down to Basildon, and then the IAG meetings then were being held at Writtle College. So it was right on the doorstep, so we didn't actually have to travel very far at all then. So so that sort of introduced me to the networking opportunities with the industry professionals, especially as what was then the Ford tractor plant just down the road, as they say, at Basildon. And obviously, that's the Case New Holland CNH plant down there, still at Basildon. So they're still building tractors in Britain. So that's good. So following graduation there from Writtle, then I served on many local and national IAGRE, Institution of Ag Engineering committees. So certainly in the local branch there in Herts and Essex. And then having left college, then I went to work for a machinery dealer. And also one of those dealers was the manufacturer and the importer of trials plot equipment. So you may see around the countryside some little yellow, blue, green combines and seed drills and the stuff. On the little trial plots in the middle of fields as you're driving around the countryside, especially in the eastern counties. And there's a few about in the western counties and Wales, but primarily we're in the eastern counties there. After about 6 years, I suppose, as a service technician, travelling the whole of the UK looking after these machines, I decided I was going to try my hand at teaching. So Myerscough College was just down the road from where I was brought up, from the farm there, but I went to the local land-based college here in Shropshire. So working initially in those.
So was that Walford? Was that Walford?
Yeah, that was Walford College then. Yeah. Working with some full-time students who wanted a general engineering kind of program. I was working with the apprentices at the level 2 and level 3 apprentices who were working in the local dealers around the area. So, we're working with all sorts of, there was New Holland, there was McCormick, there was Case IH as they were. Got some Massey Ferguson's onward patch, and then we had a couple of apprentices actually. We were in implement dealers, and the dealership owner, he'd taken the decision not to have anything with an engine on it. He wanted stuff to go on the front and the back, so he saw more business in that than he did with anything with an engine on it. So that was good. Great introduction to the territory around Shropshire, and not being a native, so that was good. And then I don't know. I had when would it have been early 2010s. I took a 2-year hiatus working in the automotive training and education.
Was that like a gap 2 year then, Graham?
Well, it was a bit like a gap
sabbatical.
2 years. A sabbatical 2 years. Yeah, and it was actually quite great, because in the FE colleges, so at Walford and Rees Heath, we had automotive training courses as well for apprentices and full-time students. And seeing the technology transfer between the two industries was even more apparent as I went to work wholly immersed in the automotive industry. And that technology now is coming through into the ag industry, sort of certainly, and that would have been, say, 2011 to 2013, something like that. Hybrids were just about on the scene, I suppose, becoming mainstream in the automotive industry, whereas we're now seeing that electrification coming through, hybrid and battery electric vehicles at the time now coming through into agricultural engineering. So that's good, seeing some of that technology coming the other way. And I remember going to one presentation one evening. A chap, I got involved in the Institute of the Motor Industry because they provided a level 1 introductory course into engineering, and that was sort of recognised by the agricultural engineering industry trade bodies as being a way into the industry as well. And I went to one of their meetings one evening, and there's this gentleman there from Daimler-Benz telling us all about this new variable transmission, this constantly variable transmission, that was a belt running between two adjustable sheaves on a pulley system. I was like, we've seen that before many years ago.
I know what one of those is on a massey combine.
I've seen those before on combine harvesters. So yeah, it's interesting how it suddenly becomes new tech for something that's been many years old in different industries. So that was great. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm at the esteemed position of a senior lecturer in agricultural engineering here at Harper Adams. So I returned here in 2013, and just recently I've taken over the role of placement manager for the engineering department. So all degrees here at Harper have a mandatory placement year. So 2 years in university, go out for a year to apply some of that learning in the workplace, and then come back for the final year or two, depending on whether you're a bachelor's student or a master's student. And interesting seeing how people have seen and developed, and are sometimes walking around shows and they're like, I developed that, as they're pointing to some component on a machine somewhere.
It's not the belt between the two sheaves, is it?
No, not anymore. They've moved to something else, like a bracket holding an axle on or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just tell me, going back to placement students, give me a flavour. Where have you got placement students at the moment within the engineering department?
So in the engineering department, we've got students on placement at Class UK in the service department there, and marketing departments. We've got people at Case New Holland down at Basildon, either in the plant helping put machines and tractors and things together, and also in field tests. So even though the majority of the product is sort of designed and developed, is designed in Italy and Belgium, they actually do a lot of field tests still in the UK. So we've got students out on field tests with them. We've got students on placement at Lely UK, so milking machines, Fullwood milking machines. We've got people on placement at just down the road from you, Andy, actually, in Bentham. At the Unimog, Atkinson Voss.
Yes.
Yeah, so they had their first placement student 18 months ago.
They are a great firm, our Atkinson Voss.
Yeah, so he was the first placement student ever, as I say, 18 months ago. And like most students, they come back with a job offer, and he's taken their offer of a job there at Higginson Voss.
Good for him.
Students placement at Grimmy, UK, and also what they call their solutions. So if somebody wants a bespoke harvester or something like that, and we had a student a couple of years ago, his project was converting a self-propelled potato harvester into a self-propelled carrot harvester. So that was his £1.5 million project.
No pressure.
No pressure. No, got to get
pressure.
it right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We'll just talk about chucking you in at the deep end. That's really good.
Yeah. So I'm convinced that the Institution of Ag Engineers helped certainly secure at least one, if not two, of these teaching roles that I currently had. So yeah, that's brilliant.
Perfect. So given you have got a considerable range of experience of routes into getting an agricultural engineering education, or using it as a stepping stone on within one's respective career, shall we have a chat about options open to people as routes into the industry? Let's talk about apprenticeships and vocational training, and as well as the further education route, we can talk about higher education as well. And other, a lot of people shift sideways into ag engineering, or don't think they're ag engineers, but then find when they look at what they're doing, they are. So let's have a bit of a conversation about that, Graham. Yeah. I'll let you start.
Yeah, so we'll start with the apprenticeships, I suppose, for a start. So many UK brands have got sort of like a national apprenticeship scheme, so the likes of Class UK, CNH, Case New Holland, AGCO. So they're covering the brands like the Massey Ferguson, the Challenger, Fendt, and Valtra here in the UK. Talking to them, one of their trainers actually 3 or 4 weeks ago now, they were saying that they've got a training centre at sort of like 4 points around the UK, so you don't have to travel to the other end of the country to go to one of their training centres. And then also, again, Kubota got a national training centre along with John Deere. And not to forget those that aren't necessarily aligned to some of those big manufacturers. Don't forget that you've got good local engineering colleges for those that aren't aligned to those major brands. So you've still got quite a good selection of land-based engineering colleges around the UK that can offer apprenticeships in agricultural engineering in that service industry. If apprenticeships aren't necessarily for you, then obviously we've got a route in through further education, full-time level 2 and level 3 courses, again at most of those local centres that are providing the apprenticeships, because apprenticeships are generally built around full-time courses or vice versa. Again, some of those will lead into 2 to 3 year courses, depending on where you start. It might even be 3 or 4 years. Not everybody enjoys school, but they enjoy the more of the college setting. And again, those are leading to employment in agricultural engineering. And some of those full-time FE courses also have placement elements as well, to get those students to appreciate the working world of agricultural engineering and the machinery and the operations and the systems in the dealership and also with their customers as well. So not forgetting all the technicians out there, service engineers, they are the face of the brand, they're the face of the dealer, helping to keep them machines supported as well. So it's a lot of that customer service skill as much as the technical skill for those. Thinking about then, you've identified that maybe you want a degree rather than staying at that sort of FE level. So we get many students here at Harper Adams who have done the equivalent of the national diploma, extended diploma at the college, and come here to Harper Adams and want to do the degree in much the same way as we get students coming who have done the A-level physics. They may have done a small BTEC qualification as well to support some of those A-levels. Don't forget, many people think that you actually need physics and maths at A-level to get into a university to do a degree, and we're one of the few around the country that we can teach you the math skill. We're more about the way your brain works and that sort of thing. So, so again, more about leading through the science behind those systems and the design of those agricultural machines. And as I say, open to those who want to progress from their level 3 course at college. We've also had students who've done a level 3 apprenticeship, stayed at work for 4 or 5 years and realised there's more to life than crawling around underneath combines and balers and that sort of thing. So they want to go and do the other side of the business. So personally, I did that vocational route. So I did that national diploma in a general engineering course, and then I moved into a higher education whilst I was at Writtle College. So I went from near Blackpool to Essex. So I got just about as far away from home as I could possibly get. And also a lot of engineers now working within the big brands and that design function are also wanting some of that professional registration as well. So personally, through my high national diploma that I did at the time, I'm registered with the Engineering Council as a professional engineer at incorporated engineering level. So Bachelor's of Engineering will get you incorporated engineer, and Masters potentially is on the way, then getting to your chartered engineer if that is what you wish as well. So, and not forgetting, of course, that many people will side shift into allied industries, because a lot of the skills and the attributes and behaviours of agricultural engineers will side shift into allied industries such as construction machinery, forestry machinery. They're vehicles that go off-road and do specialist tasks that are a different specialist task than you would expect a tractor or a telehandler to do on a farm in an agricultural setting, along with the machinery there. Not forgetting also, we've got agricultural engineers working in the likes of the true automotive sector, defence industry, and marine engineering manufacturing as well. So our skills are in great demand. I think engineers are full stop, and as a multi-purpose, isn't necessarily the right word, but certainly people who have got that appreciation of how things work, as well as just the science and the knowledge and the understanding of that behind it. So it's the application of that science in the workplace is important as much as the degree. So I think that's where the placement helps there.
Well, and you're also, you come out the other end and you're head and shoulders above anybody else looking for a job because you've already got a year of industry experience under your belt.
Yeah, and again, if you're looking for that professional registration, that industrial placement year does count as part of that professional experience to go for your incorporated or your chartered engineer.
I mean, many years ago did a sandwich degree at Harper Adams, and it stands you in good stead when you can talk about what you've done, and you can show some knowledge and some nous.
Yeah, I think it helps with that sort of being able to talk the language of the customer.
Yeah.
I mustn't forget the people who are not what you would classify as the background of a traditional agricultural engineer, who maybe like myself, brought up on a farm and hasn't had the opportunity to go back to the farm. We are seeing a lot more now coming from an urban or a semi-urban background to come and study agricultural engineering. They've realised that actually we still need to eat. There's those labour shortages in the fields for picking the fruit and vegetables, etc. So they're wanting to engineer to change the world.
Yeah. No, and it's good, and it's a great motivation as well. Graham, shall we move on? Do you want to talk and give us your personal perspectives on what agricultural engineering has done for you and how your career's progressed?
That's a lifetime's worth of reflection, as engineers are not very good at reflection. Sort of agricultural.
I'm not sure we've got that amount of time, but carry on.
Ag engineering and the Institution of Agricultural Engineers certainly introduced me to a very varied and interesting people and groups across the country. As I say, I've been down into Essex. I'm now in Shropshire for the last nearly half of my life. And through those branch meetings and national events and committees, I've met some very interesting people across the UK. I've been able to travel throughout the UK doing what engineers do best, and that's problem solving and changing the world. Certainly, when I was in the trial plot industry, we were approached by a multinational agrochemical company that were having problems with application of what effectively were going to become new sprays into the agricultural market. So they go through a very rigorous development and testing program. So they were wanting some solutions to try and mechanize the application of these new sprays onto their trial plots, rather than relying on a person with a backpack sprayer and being exposed to any potential problems with that spray drift. So yeah, it's been brilliant. Afforded to me via the institution, it certainly brought me into contact with people and technologies that have permitted me to develop professionally again. So I've gone for and achieved incorporated engineer through the Institution of Agricultural Engineers, and more recently I was the dubious pleasure of being the first registrant through the Institution of Agricultural Engineers for registered environmental practitioner through the Society of the Environment. So even though I don't work directly with the environment and ecology and that sort of thing, it's how we as engineers, what are we doing to support the environment and that sort of thing, sort of trying to reduce
it's a very important, it should be a very important part of our decision making process, should sustainability and so the fact that you might say, well, I'm not actively working as an environmentalist, as an engineer, it's got to be in your list of criteria to consider with decision making, hasn't it?
Oh, definitely. And it's certainly being brought home now with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and work here at Harper Adams and many other universities are embedding those SDGs into our curriculum. So it's getting it more exposure to into the engineering curriculum as well. Sort of, we might have a desire to plate everything in gold or something like that because it gives brilliant electrical conductivity, but can we actually afford to mine all that gold and process it? Can we use something else instead? So
yeah.
Again, advocacy for professional registration and professionalism has seen me support many students over the years to gain that Engineering Council registration. So probably about 4 years ago now, helped our first student get the first registration level, which is engineering technician, with the Engineering Council. Get that whilst they were still a student here at Harper Adams, and we've had a few of those through the system now. The Institution of Ag Engineers then has also helped me maintain my current knowledge and keep contacts within the wider industries and the allied industries, so not forgetting our construction and forestry and that. So get out and about, get talking to people, and it's just the application of what we know as agricultural engineers into different things. So thinking about some recent visits I've had, I've been at an aluminium foundry where they're making engine components for some prestige vehicle manufacturers in Europe, and it's looking at, well, what can we do from a casting point of view that you can't do through fabrication. So it's making better use and getting better strength in componentry through casting rather than fabricated welded assemblies. And then also looking at, well, we use fans quite a bit certainly on combine harvesters for cleaning the chaff from the grain, etc. So how can we use fans for other activities? So I'm sure we've all been stuck behind a road sweeper of some sort, and there's plenty of applications on there where an agricultural engineer will be quite happy at home thinking about the maneuver, the movement of air and things entrained into it, because we use quite a lot of pneumatic conveying systems, certainly on dairy farms and the like, and some arable farms for moving grain around the farm infrastructure as well. So On a personal level, local committees at national and also level there for national and local committees develop those network industry contacts, and certainly it hit home with me probably about 4 years ago. I went to the show that is for the professional grounds care, so obviously it has a great application there for agricultural engineers as well. And literally within 10 steps through the door, we'd seen 4 people that I knew, and it was like, how do you know all these people, Graham? And it's like such a small world that you scratch one,
hang around long enough, and sooner or later something like this has to happen. Yeah, just keep on keeping on. Yeah. So I'm going to get into this sort of, almost the and finally territory now. But what I'm going to say, give us your take on where you think agricultural engineering is going, given your career to date and what you've experienced and the change you've experienced.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier about battery electric vehicles and hybrid, and that is certainly on the horizon now. Recently in the agricultural engineering press, we have seen people developing battery electric vehicles, people also now developing autonomous vehicles, and everybody will have probably heard of the hands-free hectare project that ran here at Harper probably 5 or 6 years ago now. Time seems to move on so fast. So where they managed to effectively plant, tend and harvest a barley crop without anybody actually standing in the hectare of soil that they grew that crop in. So yeah, extensive autonomy is on the horizon. Certainly in the dairy industry, autonomy has been around for 20 years or so. They've had robotic milking machines. There are machines out there already that are collecting cow dung and moving it to storage points in the animal houses. Automatic robotic feeders. So I think the broadacre arable sector, I think, has probably got a lot to learn from those dairy farmers. And yes, we see a lot of drones for image work, but there's also the potential for drones for doing spot treatment of weeds and disease pressures in fields. So if you're making hay for horses or animals, etc., the last thing you want is thistles and docks and that sort of thing in there. So machines that can actually autonomously identify the dock or the thistle or the nettle growing in your grass, and it will just literally spot treat that plant and then fly across the rest of the field, and you can just literally leave it. Just remember that you need to change the battery and top up the chemical container. Going back to livestock again, we've got some colleagues who are working with a local sheep farmer, where in Australia and New Zealand, they're using drones to drive sheep as you would use a sheepdog to drive sheep. They're actually using it to attract the sheep, so they're a bit like Pavlov's dogs. They're looking at behavioural.
So presumably the drone goes with a plastic bag full of cake and shakes it, does it?
Well,
at which point they hunt him down.
Kind of, yes. That's how they were. That conditional thing.
It makes a simulated noise of a bale of hay.
Yeah, of the string being cut.
Yeah, obviously there is a problem that they keep getting. If the drone's battery runs out, they keep getting run down and eaten, do they?
Yeah. So yeah,
it's fascinating.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. There's technology, opportunities for technology, machine learning. Thinking about some of the pack house technology, they're actually now able to spot green and rotten potatoes going in and onions going into stores, but they don't actually make it into the store. They're sorting them out before they actually get in there. So yeah, there's great opportunities for computing engineers, for data scientists. Probably one of the biggest complementary occupations is probably something like a games computer programmer.
Yeah.
Looking at that high-speed image processing where they're literally photographing every egg or every apple or that sort of thing going into store. So it's brilliant.
It is fascinating. So going back to your specialist field of training and education, we've been through quite a lot with COVID, and we've got an awful lot of new technology available. Where do you see training and education going?
I think we've all been pushed rapidly towards the Zooms and the MS Teams and the WebExes. I think there's probably still a place for that offline sort of remote learning, probably as pre-learning to some, as a preamble to some actual face-to-face training. You can't be being actually face-to-face, touching, seeing the machines in real life, or whatever it is you're working with in real life for training and education. Certainly here in my work, I will lay the seed of some science or some theory in a lecture situation, then we'll actually go and see it in real life in the tutorial. So it's like we were talking about this application. So recently we were talking about hydraulic cylinders, and obviously you get a greater force pushing a hydraulic cylinder out than you get on retraction. But looking at a mini digger, a small 360-degree excavator, the cylinder is actually mounted under the boom, so you can push the cylinder out, so you'll get in maximum force. But if you take a backhoe on that traditional JCB that you get stuck behind on the road as you're traveling to and from work, they actually put the cylinder above the boom, so they're actually lifting the cylinder on the side of they're lifting the boom using the cylinder on retraction, where you get the less force. So it's the implications of that on the design of the implement, etc. So we maybe have to stack the pressure up or go for a bigger cylinder, because without seeing it, you don't always necessarily appreciate what the science is trying to tell you. Or maybe just me trying to tell them stuff in my Lancastrian manner.
It's a great manner, Graham. It's a great manner.
And that's
not good at all.
No, and I think you can't beat face-to-face learning. Learning is a social activity.
Yes.
And if you look at the sciences, so we've got the natural sciences in which engineering fits. Education actually sits in the social sciences, and as a person who is currently undertaking my master's in education, social science has been very hard work, because in engineering, if it ain't broke, you ain't trying hard enough.
Yeah.
Or if it's a sheep or something like that, it's either alive or dead or escaped. In the natural sciences, whereas in social science, everybody's right, there's no wrong. It's just varying shades of correctedness or rightiness. So it's really
difficult for a structured binary mind which has spent its life taking a series of yes and no decisions. So to have a shade of grey is a different matter, and it's not even a shade of grey, is it?
No, it's just a different answer that somebody believes is correct, and they may well be correct in their world. Other people will challenge that or agree with it.
All greys are equal.
All answers are equal.
Yes, indeed. Whatever you do, don't tell your students that.
No.
Don't tell your students that. Well, look, Graham, this has been absolutely fascinating. I really, really appreciate your time today to take us through this. You've given us a great insight into your world and some of the things you're working on, and you know the steps you've taken on your journey thus far. The deeply unfair final question, obviously, is tell us your favourite record.
My favourite record has got to be the Chippy Tea by the Lancashire Hot Pots.
You don't have to sing it.
As the recording day is a Friday.
Yeah, no, it's appropriate. Yes, yeah, it is Chippy Tea. You know what I should do at this point is perhaps ask you what you're having for your tea, Graham.
I'd love to say fish and chips, but he isn't.
Oh well, is it with a slight tinge of sadness, the podcast draws to a close with that kind of bittersweet moment where we've all got excited because it is Friday. but it's not a chippy tea.
No.
There you go.
Dear.
And on that sad note, you have been listening to Senior Lecturer in Agricultural Engineering from Harper Adams University, Mr. Graham Higginson, in conversation with myself, Andy Newbold, editor of Landwards. Thank you very much, Graham. It's been great.
Thank you very much, Andy.
You're very welcome. And we will be back with another hopefully interesting, exciting and scintillating podcast in due course. So it's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Thank you very much.
For more information, visit www.iagri.org. You have been listening to Landwards, the podcast for the land-based engineering community, brought to you by the Institution of Agricultural Engineers.